We are back to second episode of Bytes and Beyond, which I'm kind of a bit nervous, but since I have Chris on the call, I'm cool, I think. Well, I want to say that me and Chris, basically we were like a coach and mentor kind. So that's how our relationship started. And then from there, I've seen Chris going all the way beyond TEDx, and I've seen all kinds of posts. So I just want to say you were a huge inspiration.
Thank you.
And I also saw your TEDx call, and I thought that was a very unique speech. I was like, no, I never saw such a good TEDx where you made so much of fun. So I just wanted to say that it was really good. I
That's
never
very
saw
kind.
someone singing. I never saw someone actually put a piano and actually make it, all that. I was like, wow, that's so unique speech. I thought. I think I'll remember that. I don't know, but I'll still remember that speech. But anyway, before we go through to all that wonderful things, I want to say, Chris, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sai, for having me on. An episode. Just awesome. And yeah, as you mentioned before, we've been in touch for about a few years now. I remember we first worked together on interviews, and then you joined one of my courses later on. And we've just kept in touch since. And it's really been nice to see the growth of your career. I see your posts about how you're always challenging yourself to grow, and that's what I always admire. As for what I
Thank you.
do, I'm a communication coach for tech and data professionals. I started the Hidden Speaker because I was a hidden speaker for the majority of my life. I was very shy as a kid, had no idea I could do any public speaking or TEDx or anything like that. And when I learned all those skills over my career, I wanted to then share them with the rest of the tech community because what I saw working in the industry is a lot of people really struggle with communication skills a lot. It's the part of their professional development that often doesn't get addressed. And I wanted to help fill that gap through the work I do.
That's good. That's good. So if we start with the first question itself, I think what I found unique was why is it named Hidden Speaker?
Yeah.
I think that's what attracted me also to reach you. I think so. So yeah, I want you to tell the story of why it's called the Hidden Speaker.
Yeah. I believe that every person has a hidden speaker inside of them. That often we see models of good speaking as perhaps more extroverted, as more loud and charismatic and outgoing. But I believe that even introverted professionals, even those who are more on the quiet side, can be great speakers too. It's just about bringing out that confidence and bringing out that clarity in an authentic way still. And that's why I called it the hidden speaker, because that's my mission, to bring out the hidden speaker in every person.
That's good. And why do you think that data should be said in a singing way? I know that you had your own musical background,
Mhm.
but is that why the reason you have that quote saying data you want to make it sing, or
Yeah.
is it something else?
Yeah, the title of my TEDx talk was How Music Can Make Your Data Sing. And as I come from a music background. So I'm not technically an originally technical person. I love the arts. I like to think of myself as creative. And I did a lot of instrumental playing, music composition. I wanted to write music for the movies at some point in my life.
Hmm.
And that's a big part of my spirit still. When I went into tech, I realized that that emotional side, the creative side, artistic side was missing from a lot of the tech industry. We work with numbers, we work with data and code, and we don't often think about storytelling or how to engage audiences with attention. I felt if we could combine those two worlds together, what an amazing impact we could have, because then we have the emotional engagement, so people actually listen. And then when they listen, we attach it with some data and authority so they believe what we say and then they do something about it. That's what the purpose of the talk was.
Wow. And so how many years have you actually got this idea before you actually worked in tech? So like when did this idea originate from?
Yeah. Ooh. I'd say it's when I started working in the data industry, maybe about 5, 6 years ago, that I
Hmm.
realized there was this gap and maybe my non technical background could have something interesting to bring to the tech industry.
Oh, that's cool. So, how many of them have you actually trained now? Like including me, I'm sure there would
Oh,
have been many guys. So, what
yes.
did you find the common like thing where that's the gap? Like you would have found some patterns, right? Like obviously after having many people taking up the course.
Yeah.
What's the maybe you can say three things, like these are the three things I see
Hmm.
everyone who's coming into the course, like kind of a pattern.
Mhm. One would be a lot of us tend to be more on the introverted side. I think it's very clear when I talk to clients, and that's one of the biggest concerns they have. They say, if I'm more introverted and shy, can I still be successful? And I say, absolutely. It's just about making sure that you appear confident and at your best in your meetings and presentations. The thing I think is the reason behind that is data and tech in general involves just being behind a screen a lot of the time and being by ourselves,
Mm.
not having to do sales and marketing and all that. So we gravitate towards this kind of work. The other thing I notice is we tend to give a lot of detail. I was talking to someone just this morning who's been joining my online community, and he said one
Okay.
feedback he got from his boss is he goes into too much detail. The stakeholders get lost and they have to put together the pieces themselves. One
Mm.
reason I think behind that is we as technical people love our details. That's our bread and butter. That's how we make money. That's what we're specialized to find. The difficulty happens when we speak to non-technical stakeholders who don't really care so much about all the detail. They want a specific subset, and it's up to us to really translate the work into terms they understand. A third thing that I often see is, I'd say, a lack of emotion in our presentations.
Mm.
We tend to like to be objective. So we'll say, here's the data and data and data and data, and there you go. That's my convincing argument. But the difficulty there is the human brain is not wired to make decisions just with logic and data. We're very emotional in our decision making. In the TEDx talk, I talk about how there are two modes of our brain processing operating. One is very intuitive, emotional, kind of survival based. So you're in a situation, you feel fear, you want to fight, those kinds of emotions that are very fast. The other side of our brain is analytical and it's a lot slower. So when we're
Mm.
processing the world in this very intuitive way, something strikes our attention as a little abnormal. Then the analytical side says, let's look at that and scan it for all the logic and data. That's what happens when we read slides that have all the numbers on it, when we stare at a dashboard that just has tables. Charts, however, and graphs engage the emotional side with the visuals, maybe the use of color. So it's the
Mm.
combination of both that is necessary, but in data and tech, we often miss that emotional, intuitive side.
That's good. Okay, a little bit of twist in that. I know you said about people say too much details. What about people who kind of think too much and they
Hmm.
think, okay, they also, so they kind of critic themselves and think that, okay, this is already too much detail. Let me condense it, and
Yeah.
they make it down. Now, what do you say about them?
Yeah. There are, of course, the two extremes. One is a lot, but the other is too little detail. And then people are
Mm.
confused. What did you actually say? I think of it kind of like this. On the one hand, we can have very technical presentations without emotion. And
Yeah.
then maybe there's important information, but people aren't engaged. On the other
Mm.
side, we could have something like a motivational speech. So there's a lot of emotion, but maybe
Mm.
less what do you do in your daily life to implement it. So very little facts and logic and data, and that's still missing something. So we need to find the balance. And the way to find that balance is who is your audience? Doing the research and then adjusting the
Mm.
detail to their expectation.
That's so true. I think this is what I learned from the second course you had,
Yeah.
where you talked about learning about the people whom you're presenting to, like your stakeholders or stuff. And I think that's a really good feedback, not for me, but I actually it helped me a lot
Mm-hmm.
to think in a different perspective. I was thinking in the way of first thing where, okay, I have all this to present, I want to show, but then later on understood from the course that it's actually you're presenting to the people. You need to understand the people first
Mm-hmm.
and then work from there backwards to what you want to present. I
Mm-hmm.
think, is that the right way
Exactly.
to interpret?
Yes. Very well
Good.
said.
That's good. That's good. So the next thing I think where people kind of get like it's very tough to talk about is confrontations with the people you have become close with in the company.
Mm.
And I'm like, is that something? Is that a style where you need to learn things, or is it something where is it very personal things you learn about?
Mm,
Like, how do you deal with those like confrontations and things where you want to say something tough, but at the
yeah,
same time you don't want the other person who has worked with you for so long take it the other way? Like, how does this whole dynamic work?
yeah. This is in some ways cultural, I feel. In some cultures, I know I come
Hmm.
from an East Asian culture, and I think for you it might be similar as well,
Yeah.
where we tend to want to be more indirect in the way we speak, to not offend anyone, to keep
Hmm.
peace, and we want to maybe people pleasing is more within our culture than others, let's say.
That's true. Hmm.
However, I believe we both work in Western cultures where there is more of a tendency to favor direct feedback and saying it how it is. I think we can find a good balance. And a good balance would be there's a book called Radical Candor. And the
Hmm.
idea of it is we need to be radical in the way that we are honest. So
Hmm.
when we give feedback, it's a gift to the other person. We're telling them how they can improve. The way to deliver that well is being, of course, respectful, but doing it in a timely way. So when the thing happens that they do that we want to address, then we say, hey, let's talk about this. And to
Hmm.
say it directly and clearly, not to waffle around it, but just tell them how it is. And this is what you can do to address it. When we do it in that way, the other person, of course, we can't control how they feel, but we're doing it in the most respectful way possible. A framework I recommend for giving feedback goes SBI. So it's situation, behavior, impact.
Hmm.
So first you talk about the situation. You say, hey, I noticed the last time you gave a presentation, you gave a lot of details, let's say, on slide 8. And
Hmm.
then we go to the behavior part. We say, when you talked about slide 8, you talked about a lot of the details related to the process and the hypothesis, but the stakeholders in the room were really interested in the action steps needed to be taken afterwards. Then we move to the
Yeah.
impact part. We say, due to that, the stakeholders were confused about what they needed to do next, and that affected the outcome of the project. So there's
Hmm.
situation, behavior, impact, and then you open it up and say, let's now talk about and let me hear your suggestions for how we can address that and move forward together in a more productive way. So in the feedback, it's very specific. So I'm not saying you're horrible at presenting. Then people are going to be really offended. Or you give too
Yeah.
much detail because then it feels like you do that all the time, which is not always the case. But very
Hmm.
specific to that one time, let's talk about the behavior that happened and then the impact of it. So you see the consequences. And then, hey, let's talk about how to move forward.
Hmm. I think that's a really diplomatic way, can I say?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really good. Like, if you fall into the same category, I think the other thing where people find it very tough is, and this was a question asked from a friend who said when I'm interviewing you, he said, "Can you ask this question?"
Yeah.
So I'm just getting that question is that why does it feel so kind of taboo when we speak about money in the workplace? Like
Mm-hmm.
when money is brought up, even the guy who says about the money and even the guy who's listening to that, both the guys feel different kind of I would say friction, if that's the
Yeah.
right word. And like, why does it feel like that way? Is it the
Yeah.
culture or is it the person itself involved in that talk?
I think it is largely cultural. I'm not sure
Hmm.
if it's true cross culturally, every single culture. What I do know
Yeah.
is in the cultures we're familiar with, it is taboo
Mhm.
to talk about. And I think it's because we associate money with our value, both as employees and as people. For example,
Hmm.
I was talking to my accountant when I started my business, and he said, so how
Hmm.
much did you make? And I was ashamed to say because it wasn't as high as I would have liked. It wasn't as much as I
Okay.
was making when I was in the industry because I was just
Hmm.
starting out. And I was like, oh, I feel all these emotions that I'm not good enough. But I had to tell him it's his job to know how much I make. I think it's important for us to overcome those cultural limitations, let's say, because salary transparency, knowing how much money we should be making is important when we're trying to get promotions and getting more money for ourselves and knowing what the market rate is. So I think we can
Hmm.
move forward. It's just about slowly changing the culture, hopefully.
Hmm. That's true. Do you find it only in the East culture, or do you find even the Western culture when you like maybe in your
Mm,
experience?
yeah,
I have just entered the industry. I understand from the culture I come from. Yes, I think similar cultures we have.
yeah,
That's a taboo. We don't even talk about the money you make,
right.
and that's a thing. But when you look at the Western culture, when you look at the media and stuff, they are very outward and they talk about the money.
Hmm.
But actually, when you work with the people, they don't talk about the money.
Yeah,
So this is where the whole confusion comes. What do you think of that?
yeah. I have found the Western culture is the one I'm most familiar with. I grew up in it. I worked in it.
Okay.
It used to be you don't talk about it at all, even in social conversations with anybody. But I
Hmm.
found in more recent years, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I see people sharing their salaries very openly. This is how much I made in this position and this position and this position to help people say, okay, if they made that much, I should advocate for that much when I apply and hopefully get
Hmm.
the position. I think the conversation is changing and I hope it continues in that direction.
Yeah, well, I hope the same too. I do see a lot of posts, and I think that's true. It
Yeah.
is changing. I hope so. Now, just to turn a little bit of twist. Now, the positive side. How do you prove your worth within a company? Like, how do you promote your work?
Mhm.
Or is there any framework, or is it like normally what I follow is this is the task I've done, this is the action, and this is the result or the impact it has done to the
Mhm.
company, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I don't want to complicate things, but again, if that's the right way, or is there any other better way? So I just want to get your views on that.
Mm. I think that approach is excellent. It works for resumes too. On the resume,
Mm,
it's not good enough to say, I worked on this project. It's important to say, I did this task and this action, and this is the quantitative result. I increased sales 5% or 10%.
yep.
That's important to do. I'd add on to that in a company, important to always say the quantitative impact of your work too. But perhaps even more important is to raise your visibility by communicating and presenting. The reason for this is we as human beings and all our leaders are wired to be on the emotional side when we make decisions. We will likely promote people who we like, and we will like people who are more visible, who show their face, and who are amiable to
Mm,
us. So, regardless of your place in the hierarchy, regardless of how old you are, it's important to try and make yourself as well known as possible to the people you work with, especially to leadership. That's how you will be top of mind when promotion discussions happen.
that's true. So the visibility is the main factor
Yeah.
here, I think. Then,
Mhm.
oh, that's cool. And how do you build confidence or competence with the leadership? Because when you enter a company, let's say way too early, it's going to be a little bit of like they have to understand you, you have to understand them. But maybe after sometimes some people take 1 year to get that dynamic, some guys take 6 months. So after that, how do you like what's the change where you can show to
Mhm.
the people that you're actually confident with what you're doing? Like, is that something which you developed personally, or
Mhm.
does it take like step by step procedure to come to that point?
I'd say it varies for each person, but a good starting step is volunteering for those presentations. So the more confidence you get because you've done it more and more, and actually your boss might recognize your potential because of your willingness to do that and say, hey, maybe you can present to the more senior leadership eventually. I had a boss who I presented to and I tried to communicate as much as possible with, raise my visibility. And he said, hey, let's have you present to the CEO. This was a fantastic opportunity and he coached me through it too. He said, this is what you should expect in the meeting. You're going to get a lot of questions. You have to prepare X, Y, and Z. So I was ready
Hmm.
for it. And I really appreciated the fact that he held that space with me and let me practice with him. So I think the key is practicing yourself first and then finding that advocate for you in the company who's going to help champion you and get you those
Hmm.
opportunities.
That's like, especially people who just enter the industry. Let's correct me if I'm totally wrong, but I think they're more technically savvy.
Mm.
But the problem is with the communication part. Now, when they come and like when they want to present things to the senior leadership, they think that okay, the leadership doesn't understand what I need to say, so they don't present it well. Like, how do you come out of this and actually understand that in
Mm.
every company there is going to be this kind of thing, but how do you come out of that? face.
Yeah. This is a different kind of advice that I usually give, but I think it'll be helpful.
Okay.
With AI, we have phenomenal capability to prepare for presentations in a new way. So before AI was invented, you'd say, okay, what do people think? What kind of questions should I prepare for? What should this slide deck be about? Maybe you'd ask them, maybe you'd ask people who presented to them before. But now with AI, you can ask ChatGPT, for example, hey, I'm presenting to the CEO. This is what they do. This is what they usually like. This is their business domain. Help me prepare what this presentation should be about. What should be in the slide deck? What questions will they ask? If I give you these answers, is that good or not? It's incredible what you can do, and it can make us super prepared for any presentation we get.
That's a good tip, actually. So, can it be in the other way? Like, why do people need tech people? So they use AI for that? Like, again,
Yeah.
it's a fun banter, but again, I'm like, I always think that, okay, they can understand whatever they want with AI. So why do they need people technical to talk about it? Like, do you think there's going to be a change now with all these AI tools and stuff since we are in the same topic?
Yeah. I've seen in our industry a lot of happen. I think a lot of companies believe that AI can replace a lot of the workforce. And to some extent, it can, because we do a lot of manual work, especially as junior professionals, that AI can do now.
Yeah.
But AI is not perfect. ChatGPT hallucinates, it makes up stuff occasionally. And the reason we need tech people is to verify what this AI is saying and to make sure it's done correctly. So we need both still. I don't know if I'll shift to completely AI for some portion eventually, but as of now, you still need both.
That's true. So coming back to our topic, sorry if I went
No.
tangent. Like, how do you like take a good feedback? So now we have come where, okay, let's say I have presented things to my leadership, and now they have come with the feedback. Now, once they have come with the feedback, it can be good or bad. It depends on how I take it. Because I always think that good and bad is very personal. Like, the good is good to you might be good, not good to me. So good and bad is very perspective kind. It's based on that. So how do you take a feedback? That's my first question. And then how do you follow that feedback?
Something I do with my clients is make sure that when I give them feedback, I want them to do something with it. For example, I gave feedback to a client just over the weekend when we had our coaching session. I said, I want you to enunciate the words that you say in these sentences because the way that you're currently pronouncing it with the very fast rate of speech that you have, it's more confusing for me to listen to. So I'm not able to understand it as well, this person being a non-native English speaker. So I said, okay, that's the feedback I've given you. I hopefully gave it to you in a direct but respectful way. Now I would like you to implement it. Each day from now on, I'd like you to send me a recording of yourself saying a sentence or saying a passage that I give you and enunciating it in the way that I told you. I have them do that every day. I see a dramatic improvement. And it showed that they took the feedback to heart, they did something with it, and now it's become a habit, so I won't need to give that feedback again.
So unless there's an action done, that feedback is not going to be, it's just going to be a statement of words, I think.
That's what I believe too.
That's true. That's good. And how do you follow up? Like, okay, by action, that's good. But there are sometimes where within the organization, we don't know what's happening. So we need to kind of put a statement saying, because of this feedback, this is what I've been doing. Otherwise, it's like if you don't mention that statement, it kind of feel that you've just done it out of your own thing, which kind of sometimes goes well and sometimes goes good and bad. It's again different dynamic. So how do you follow up a feedback then?
Yeah. I think what's very important to do when we get feedback, for example, is to be proactive about saying, hey, manager who gave me the feedback, I want to set a check-in meeting with you in a month or maybe a few weeks to see if I did the feedback well. If you don't have that on the calendar, you're going to forget it. They're going to forget it. And hopefully the manager is also proactive in saying, I want to see your progress implementing this piece of feedback I've given. So the key step here is scheduling it in, to hold yourself accountable.
Oh, that's true. Okay, so once you have done a presentation, let's say now you have gone and done a presentation to the leadership, and then they have given a feedback and you followed up the feedback. Then next, when you want to ask them about my next projects, like I think that's also a different kind of a question that they have to gain trust within you. I think even to give you more projects. So is it best way to just to go directly and ask them, okay, now I've done this, can I just have extra projects? Is that the best simple way, or is there any other way for that?
Yeah, what I usually recommend is for your manager, you usually would have one-on-ones with them. So private check-ins between just you two. And in those check-ins, it's important to clarify what your goals are as a professional. I want to be a manager in the future, or I want to take on more work related to this task to grow my skills in that area. If your manager knows those things, then they can help you and look out for you and say, here's a project related to that you mentioned last check-in. I want to see you grow. If you have a good manager who's looking out for you and wants to make sure that you achieve your professional goals, it'll all work out if you share them in that way.
So basically being open with your manager about your expectations, I believe.
Absolutely.
Like, what's your aspiration to be? I think that should help. That's good. And since I know that you have gone to TEDx and stuff, like all other events I've seen, how did you come out of this fear of public speaking? Like, what opened up that kind of quality within you? Because I think you mentioned that you were a shy guy. How did that thing totally change to now being in all these kind of wonderful events you're in?
I'd say to anyone who's listening and worries that they might never overcome fear of public speaking, I want to say this, which is I'm always nervous before I do a public speaking event. So I'm going to be nervous before doing a podcast. I'm going to be nervous before doing TEDx. I'm going to be nervous before doing anything that involves me communicating because I want to do well. And because I want to do well, I'm going to be nervous, and that's because I care. Yeah. The way to manage those nerves is to remember a few things, because if your nerves get out of control, then you're not going to be able to do your best. But nerves under control and managed can propel you to do the best job that you can. So the first thing would be, remember that your audience is your friend. Everybody there wants to see you succeed. So if I'm giving a TEDx talk, I'm really nervous about doing a good job, but I have to remember everybody watching me wants me to do a good job too. So just soak in that energy. Nobody wants to see me fail and do horribly, or they would have wasted their time. The second thing would be to remember that making mistakes is okay. We all make mistakes. Everybody knows everybody makes mistakes. The best thing to do is to just keep moving. And then nobody's going to know it except for you. So on the TEDx stage, for example, I made a mistake. I think I tripped over something on the floor, and I could have made a huge big deal out of it and said, oh, my talk is ruined or something like that. But I just kept going and nobody noticed it at all. So you keep your composure and just keep going gracefully. And the last thing would be that your nerves and your excitement are the same thing. It's just the way that you interpret it. Because if you imagine you're going on vacation, you feel those butterflies in your stomach. Now, if you imagine that you're about to do public speaking, you feel the same butterflies in your stomach sensation. The only difference is your mind interpreting them differently. So vacation, great. Public speaking, bad. So the nerves become anxiety. But for the vacation, the nerves become excitement. If you reframe the way you look at public speaking as not this opportunity to mess up and look bad and be judged, but as an opportunity to share your expertise, and that's why you were selected to speak, because people want to hear your thoughts, that's how you shift from nerves to excitement.
Wow. So I also see that, I think just before you put a TEDx talk, I think you also put a video about how you prepared the TEDx talk.
Yeah.
I see. And I was like, that's something very unique, where normally people just say like a surprise that I've been on the TEDx talk and they just put the video there. What made you to even say that, this is how I prepared it? And like, what was that inspiration behind it? Like, why did you want to show that I actually failed multiple times before I actually went to the stage?
Yeah, I want to change the perception in society.
Mm,
So we talked before about how money is taboo. I think
yeah,
another big social norm is we tend to think public speakers are super confident, know what they're doing, and make no mistakes. I want to show that behind that, there was a lot of work that needed to be done. I messed up times, I failed many times. And I want to inspire people to say, hey, it's hard on the journey, but eventually maybe you can get to a place where you feel super confident too. And that was the reason.
that's true. And I see, like, do you think that putting your thoughts on LinkedIn or maybe all other social media platform, what's your thoughts on that? How does
Hmm.
it help a person?
It's really helped me do a lot of self reflection because
Hmm.
before I started my business and was on social media, I didn't do a lot of self reflection at all, journaling, any of that. Now, because I post and I blog and I make YouTube videos, I'm always thinking about where am I in my own journey? How much have I grown? Where can I continue improving? So it's been, if anything, a personal diary for me to keep track of my
Hmm.
progress.
So it's like kind of like it keeps you accountable, basically,
Yeah.
the posts and stuff. That's interesting. And I know that when I met you, I think 5 years back, I don't remember the count, but I know today it's around 25 to 30K in LinkedIn, and I'm sure it's more in YouTube and other platforms. How did you get into this journey of like, you know what, I'll just be as truthful as I am, as honest as I am, I'll just put it
Mhm.
outside. Like,
Mhm.
how do you break that barrier of like initially when you post the first time you'd have I don't know, I'm assuming like you would have thought that okay, your post should have been perfect and it has to be a perfect thing, and now you're like, you know what, just I'll just put myself, it's fine. And you always get people commenting like how did that thing change?
Yeah. When I started out, as you said, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted everybody to like my posts and comment on it and say they're amazing. But over time, I realized something was happening to my mental health when that happened. I was
Hmm.
attached to wanting to be liked by people. And that's not very healthy because then you're not doing anything for you anymore. You're doing it for all this virtual engagement. And does that really mean anything? Do people actually like it? I realized that what I had to do to prevent myself from having bad mental health and to make sure that I was enjoying doing this posting, I wanted to just share everything that I genuinely was feeling, just
Hmm.
sharing those vulnerable thoughts. And I found when I did that, it actually got even more engagement, even though I didn't intend it, by saying what my failures were, because people relate to that. It made me more human than just another AI bot on the platform making posts or comments. I think, and I strongly encourage that vulnerability for anyone who's on social media because we need more of that now than
Yeah,
ever in this time.
that's true. That's true. I think I see a lot of like the posts which are very honest. When you actually read the post itself, you kind of resonate with them. Like, oh yeah, when I felt the same way when I did something new. I think those kind of posts where people think, okay, that's a human generated post.
Yeah.
And because right now every post you have to think, is it AI or is it human? And you're in that kind of phase today. But I think it's very genuine to see that. And do you think that it actually helps a person in the carry in their career aspirations?
Mm.
Doesn't matter which career they go to. It can be any product development or software or even data science or anything.
Mm.
Do you think putting yourself on social media, is that the only way? Is that the only unique way other than going through the traditional way of resume and just cold emailing? Do you think actually putting out just on social media is because some people find it like kind of cliche kind, because I'm like, again, social media has become that, but I've changed that kind of mindset. But what do you think about that
Mm.
statement?
I was talking to someone just yesterday. He was a fellow speaker at the TEDx event I was at. And he was sharing that when he was job searching all the way back when he started, he didn't do any social media at all. He still doesn't. And he does it
Hmm.
the traditional way. He meets people, he networks, he goes to coffee chats and happy hours, and he applies to jobs. I believe, though, that for the younger generations, especially with so many applicants and so much competition, things have changed since that time. I think you need a personal brand to stand out because if you think about it, let's say you're applying for a data analyst role. Everybody has the same skills as you, can do SQL, Power BI, Tableau, whatever it
Everything.
is.
Yeah.
And you need to differentiate yourself somehow. Maybe it's your ability to communicate well, and you can share videos of yourself delivering
Yeah.
presentations. But maybe it's also a social media presence. If people see that you can amass this huge social following, you must be doing something right. It's that social proof aspect. And by networking online, you can also meet people who might lead to jobs and give you that personal referral that means a lot,
Hmm.
especially in a huge stack of applications. So in summary, I think that a personal brand, online social media presence, while not essential, is really important to have.
That's true. And do you also think like going to these events and just showing up in this all kinds of fairs we have, other technical fairs you have, or even in within the industry you're working in, all those events. Do you think when you show up in those events, does it actually help that person other than gaining the knowledge?
Hmm.
Is there any other thing that we have to look for? And especially for a kind of person who doesn't know anything, he just entered into that event. What should he be doing there?
Hmm. I think that going to those events is important because it exercises your communication muscles and skills, which are essential for the
Hmm.
interview later on.
Yeah.
And what can help before you go in is see who's coming. That way you can pre-plan. For a lot of introverts like myself, I don't like going in a situation and not knowing anything that's happening, just wandering around aimlessly. So if I know that there's a company there that I want to work for, and I know the person who's going to be there, I can do research, look up their LinkedIn profile, see what are their interests, what are things they posted about before. Then go to that person directly and say, hey, I love your content, and then just have a casual conversation. Maybe it will lead to the job eventually for you. For Intra4 or anyone in general, networking events are great, and just do that research beforehand.
That's true. And how many, it might be something very regional question I'll be asking is that I do see all this kind of events in USA and only in that kind of part. But when I'm trying to look into the other part of like where I come from is UK and then Europe side and stuff, other countries, I don't know if the whole social media is all about United States of America, but and I don't see the other countries, and that's where even this podcast I'm trying to help the people
Mm-hmm.
within the region. But what do you think is that the actually that's how the is it controlled or what do you think?
Mm. I'm not too familiar with the UK Europe side, but I
Hmm.
do know there are a lot of people in my network who hold meetups in the UK and Europe and happy hours and things like that to create data community there. I am not too sure if it's more well established or less established in the US, but I do know they exist.
No, that's true. That's good. And what are the events you have gone to which you think actually you found very interesting
Yeah.
recently maybe?
I've taken a new approach to networking for myself. I used to go in saying, okay, I'm going to meet X person and get this opportunity. But I don't like looking at relationships as transactional things. Like, I'm going to go
Hmm.
in, get this, you're going to do this for me, I'm going to do this for you. I want to go in genuinely to have a conversation, make a connection with a human being. And if it goes somewhere, great. If not, that's okay. I went to a panel a few days ago to talk about the TEDx talk that I gave and inspire other people who want to give a talk of their own. I went to a few happy hours earlier in January. I went to many coffee chats last year with just people in my network who live in the area. And if anything, it didn't lead to productive stuff right now. Maybe in the future it will, but it was just good conversation with them and I enjoyed it.
Hmm. I think there's if I add one point to that is that every network is actually again it's another person you're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So I always think that when you want to have some kind of connection with that person, do you think of yourself?
Mm-hmm.
If you just go and say for the first time I want so
Yeah,
and so thing from you, do you think that you will go back and talk to you?
right.
That's how I think,
Yeah.
and then that's how I go and talk. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going in terms of I want something from you. It's
Mm-hmm.
just I want to have a connection with you and let's see where it goes.
Yeah,
Like I don't know where it goes, but let's just see where it goes. Is that
exactly.
the right way?
Exactly. That's my approach too.
That's cool. And coming back to your story, like where I found like even way before you started the hidden speaker, like I see that you have been a data analyst and data visualization analyst and stuff. Like how did these roles actually help you to actually open up that okay, there's a huge gap where communication is a problem. Because what I think is that data visualization or all this kind of roles, you need to speak more.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I find it very unique that you have come out of the industry and started a whole thing. And I was like, didn't wasn't that actually achieved by these roles? It's just might be a personal question,
Mm.
but just based on what I have seen, like visualization and stuff, those kind of roles where you actually need to speak to the people a lot, because then only you can understand what you need to visualize on the dashboard or as a PowerPoint or whatever. But what led to actually start the hidden speaker altogether
Yeah.
from those roles?
When I went into the field in data, I
Mhm.
thought it was going to be a role where I didn't have to talk to anybody. The
Same.
introverted, I like that kind of thing. I went in and I thought it was going to be just me coding behind a screen. But I quickly realized with each job I got, you need to talk to a lot of people, gather
Mhm.
requirements from stakeholders, present, talk to your boss. Everybody needs to be spoken to at some point. And I saw that there were a lot of professionals I knew who struggled with that skill set, who weren't getting promoted or getting the
Mhm.
opportunities they deserved because they were less confident in communication. And I said, okay, maybe this is something that I can help address. One manager gave me this piece of feedback early on in my career. He said, Chris, something that I really like about the way you approach your work is you do the technical stuff. Great. A lot of people do the same, but you also have this business sense. You can communicate with the business people in a way they understand what's going on. They're engaged with you when you present. And that skill, no matter what you do with your career, if you're with this company or anything, that's going to take you really far. And I took that to
Mhm.
heart and I realized communication really is the skill that can help people succeed because communication is associated with competence, just in the same way money is associated with competence. If people see you communicate well, they think you know what you're talking about, and it can really take your career off to new heights. And that's why I decided to do what I do.
That's, did you find a way where maybe at the start of the career, since you are very new to the field, the way you when you say your words and stuff kind of feel to the other person that you're not confident, and that's something understandable.
Mhm.
But how did you come out of uh, that phase where
Mm.
whatever I say is confident, and because I believe that even the way you say, you have to say it in a different tone, and if there are a lot of things you need to know about that,
Mhm.
and even unknowingly though you pretend, it still comes out like it comes out naturally that you're not confident in what you're asking.
Mhm.
Like, so how do you deal with those kind of stuff when you started the career itself in the first time, and then you moved on, and then how did you get that confidence back?
Yeah. I'd say that when I started my career, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. So I said, I don't think I deserve this role because I had my music background before. I said, I don't have a degree. Why did they hire me? So I convinced myself that I wasn't worthy of this position, and that influenced my communication. I said a lot of ums and uhs and put a lot of words like, oh, maybe you could do this, or this is kind of what I think, just cutting off the confidence in my own communication. I began to reflect and say, wait a minute, I was hired here for a reason. They believe in me, clearly. And I started to get feedback from others that I was doing work they respected. So I said, okay, I can do this job. I can do well. Why am I making my communication less persuasive purposefully? And that switch made me realize I'm in control. Maybe I can, over time, begin to communicate more confidently and not only do good work, but have people see it as good work because I've communicated it well. And that was the big mindset shift for me.
Wow. So that's how Hidden Speaker started, can I
Right,
say?
right, right.
Cool. How long has this has been now? You're running it
Oh,
for past 6 years or more than that?
I'd say less than that actually.
Uh,
It's at least full time because I had my
hmm.
corporate job before. I did this stuff more on the side, but officially full time for about 2 years now only.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's cool. So if you want to say it in a very simple term, what kind of services you provide
mm,
in your company? What would you say that?
yeah.
Like I know for sure that when I started, I think I read your blog, and that's how I said, can I
That's
contribute to your
right.
blog?
That's
And
right.
then
Yes.
we moved to like I became your client and stuff. But
Yeah.
how are things now going? Like what's the services?
Mm. At a high level, it's teaching communication skills for tech and data professionals. And you can break
Mm-hmm.
that into three buckets. One would be the online community I run. So you were previously part of a class that I taught where there were recorded
Mm.
lessons and assignments. I decided to shift to a new teaching model where instead of
Mm.
having students watch the videos and then send me assignments, every week I teach it live and we practice together. It makes it a little more fun, a little bit more supportive where everybody's here at the same time. And I do that every week. So every week it's a new topic, speaking, storytelling, slide design, data communication, and we learn together.
Fun.
Yeah, it is a very fun set of sessions. I had one just yesterday.
Yeah.
And the other piece that I teach is private coaching. So for people who
Mm.
want more personal attention, who have individual goals, like they want to be a leader or manager and want to give presentations on stages or on camera and do that really well, I have private coaching. So it's one-on-one sessions and just tailored to them. Lastly, I have workshops for companies. So for people who want to
Mm.
learn data storytelling, visualization, presentation, communication, I do workshops for teams in the companies, teach them, okay, here's how you design a good dashboard. Here's how you present that dashboard well, or here's how you create a good slide deck. And with those three services, I've been very proud of the work that's been done so far.
And do you find any kind of success stories which you can share?
Yeah,
Like maybe one story
sure.
can be,
Yeah.
yeah.
I worked with one person. She was a manager at a big tech company like Amazon or Google.
Mm.
And she was really nervous about her communication. She came to me because her boss gave her feedback, wasn't delivered in the radically candid way.
Okay.
It was kind of very harsh. And it said,
Hmm.
you don't sound confident when you speak. Your conversation is all over the place. I don't know what you're saying. You need to be more concise. She came to me
Mm.
because her job was on the line if she didn't master this skill.
Yeah,
So
that's a tough time.
right. It was a very tough time. We needed to work on it very quickly. So I said to her, okay, here's a personalized lesson plan. We'll do the private coaching sessions just for you. We work together on the confidence piece first, because if you're not confident, it's going to come out in all the other parts of your communication. So I asked her all these questions to really dive deep. Why is it that you don't feel as confident as you like when you speak? And this was tied to a lot of her previous experiences, some difficult experiences that made her feel she wasn't good enough, that she wasn't an expert. So we really chipped away at that and let her realize she is an expert at her field. She knows what she's talking about, and to embrace that
Mm.
fully. Once we master the confidence, we then move to, okay, here's some frameworks you can use, many of which you learned in the course, to speak clearly and concisely. So if you're asked a question, how do you do that in an effective, organized way? Well, one could be point, reason, example, point. Say your point, give a reason for that point, an example for that reason, tie it all together. Things like that. And just
Mm.
practicing that a lot, sending me assignments, helped her make it a habit. It became really second nature for her to communicate that way. And finally, we worked on presentations. So now that you've worked on confidence and now you worked on the short responses, maybe you can go on the stage one day, create your own course. And that's what she ended up doing. By the end of our time working together, she said, I feel ready to give a talk. And she felt ready, course of her own. And she did. I was really proud to see. I think it was on Udemy or something like that. Put the whole thing together, launched it, and I was like, this is a beautiful achievement to as a capstone for all the work we've done. And I'd say one of the stories I remember most.
Wow, that's really inspiring. So, what are the most other exciting things that are going to come? What are you
Yeah.
planning for the next phase of Hidden Speaker? Is there anything you want to share?
Oh, I plan to do more public speaking, I hope. Similar to this. I want to do more workshops, a lot more of just what I'm doing already. But I think the big thing that's on my bucket list is writing a book. I want to put all
Wow.
my knowledge together into something that's accessible for anyone to read. That's the
I
big
think
goal.
yeah, I think I'll buy it for sure.
I'll keep you
That's
posted.
that's cool. That's cool. And maybe this is the last question. How did I do so far?
You did fantastic. You know, one thing that happens on a lot of podcasts
Yeah.
is people come with these questions they want to ask and they just stick to the questions. And it becomes more of a transactional conversation. But you just asked me questions. It was very natural. And I felt like I was just
Yeah,
having a conversation with an old friend, which you are. So
that's
you did
cool.
an excellent job.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Chris. And I think personally, I have learned a lot from your LinkedIn posts.
Mhm.
And I think even if anyone who follows through your LinkedIn and just hang on with and wait for Chris's post, you find something new always. And I'm like, okay, that's a new thing. Oh, that's a new thing. Oh,
Mhm.
that's a new thing. And it's always new things when I see on that post.
Awesome.
And I want to say that your journey from where I have seen, like as an entrepreneur,
Mhm.
from where I've seen the time when we talked, and then now you're busy with your events and all that, and I'm like, wow, anyone can do anything what they dream for. Because I
Mhm.
remember when we had conversations, you were saying me about what you wanted,
Yeah.
and now like when I was talking about my aspirations, and you were sharing your aspirations on the call before I became a client and stuff. But I was like, all that. I'm just trying to remember our conversation. I'm like, you're already doing all that, and
Mhm.
that's kind of a movie for me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm a spectator, and I'm
Mhm.
seeing that whole journey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I'm saying that's really wonderful to
Thank
with
you.
there. So thanks a lot for coming, and I hope you had really good time
I did.
this whole trip.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you a
having me,
lot.
Sai. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.